We've just tasted Domaine de Corne, Roteboeuf, and Tertre with François Mitjavile. Probably the most eloquent, poetic, argumentative, brilliant man of wine that we have yet come across. And it's been a remarkable tasting of an extraordinarily difficult vintage. So let's start with a dull commercial question. When you price a vintage, do you base your pricing on the intrinsic quality of the vintage, the quality of the market, or a combination of the two?
Yes, none of these points of view. Just to say that I don't trust about the marketing point of view of the quality of the vintage, you know. This is commercial needs about the production, the demand, and things like that. Moreover, if you produce pure vintage with no selection, if your situation, your soil, and your what we call the terroir is great enough to produce something exciting every year, and that I can prove because we don't make not even a tier of second wine, with no selection, then you can express something which is in the deep representation of the emotion of the flavors of what means the poetic of the vintage, because the fruit never ripens the same way, it has never the same flavors, and even 30 years after, you have the pleasure when you taste to try to bend down on the past. Was it rainy? Was it sunny? Was it muscular? Was it opulent? And that is very important in the variety of the flavors of each vintage. If the terroir is exciting enough, is much more important for the amateur or for the lovers of wine than the standard of the quality, which would be better or lower. The variety is against the idea of one god of the beauty. You know, then what I would say, the quantity I don't mind too. I just look very simply the demand of my wines in the world. As long as the demand is strong and the wine are sold easily, the prices are correct.
The growing season, we know, was difficult. We know that it's a difficult vintage from the growing season point of view. You have produced beautiful wines. I suspect beautiful wines will be in a minority in 2021, in general, in Bordeaux. What particular issues did you have?
Yes. This vintage has had some difficult points. In the country, we had somewhere in various places frost, sometimes hail, sometimes mildew, awful mushroom. Well, when you are in properties of good situations where you could escape, we did not frost, we did not have any hail nor mildew. Anyway, this was a very specific and quite strange climate. The spring was very cold, the vegetation suffered in its development. The summer was a little bit cold and humid, with the life of the soil, which is the microbiologic life of the soil was not very living, and the nitrification, mineralization, everything not going so well as you could have hoped. And the vegetation was suffering and working very slowly. And at the moment of the harvest, it was difficult too, because the rain was there, mixed with sunny moments. So how can we try to define the character of the vintage? Because the most important is that if you express something exciting, the most important is try to express in a refined and pleasant manner what was the character of the fruit and the character of the vintage. No, you can say that the fruit is not a fruit black, comfy, profound, because it could not get this type of ripeness, but it's a fruit which is something spectacular, exploding, shining flavors of a fruit which is more red black than black, comfy, profound. So you have a wine which is more shining, more than in the deft flavors. Now, because of this temperated climate, there was not a strong density of little fruits, so it's quite supple with a rather low acidity and something tender and voluptuous in flavors. And third point, because of this difficult climate, the structure of the skin of the seeds were tenderized by the humidity.
Global warming is a fact of life. We have seen that over the last 10, 20 years in wine in particular. Does it worry you here at Tertre and
Alors, oui, well, on a general point of view,
no, specific to Tertre.
just a préalable, how do you say that in English?
An overture?
First point, just on a general point of view, obviously, as everyone, I'm worried about the evolution of the global warming on Earth. No, here in Bordeaux, I'm not worried really. I will try to explain you why. First, we have the enormous, powerful of the breath of the Atlantic Gulf Stream that temperates the global warming movement. A second point of view, we work the agriculture progress of understanding how the plant lives goes on even in our generation, obviously, more than in the previous wine. We have plant in better health to produce fruit more beautiful. Our children will produce better, it's a long history of civilization. But what does it mean? It means that a plant in better health ripens later, naturally. And now I am harvesting nowadays at the same dates that when I was young, not year earlier. And third point, we can play on the selection of our varieties, Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc. We can play to choose varieties that will mature a little bit later, evolution of the variety. So, on these 3 points of view, if we look practically here, I do not feel worried at all for, let's say, the next 30 years.
Okay.
That's enough, isn't it?
Yes, and yes, you'll still be young then, which is very exciting.
Oh.
Right. And then finally, because you described your wine as, in the best sense, autumnal, which I think is a lovely expression of the wine. If you had the opportunity, which you still have, but to make a wine anywhere else in the world, or any other country or region within another country, could be this country, France, where would you go?
Well, I'm a Frenchman from southern origin in the country of Bordeaux and rather old now. So I would not sell my art of living for any place else.
That is a perfect answer.